So, hello and welcome to another episode of Resonants. Today, I have with me a Brazilian singer, musician, actor, designer, and many more certain titles that I'm forgetting. Welcome, CONRADO.
Thank you.
I'd like to do a super small intro. We met in an open mic a few months ago, and I remember you were singing your own songs. I felt it was very personal moments and stories. It was like you felt like a very warm, a very affectionate performer.
I don't remember what I was singing. But
I remember the place. It was at Meku, and there was this one song about winter in Estonia or being a Brazilian in Estonia.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the funny one. Everyone knows about it.
Everyone remembers that. Yeah, so this is when you got my interest, and I'm very happy to be with you today. Do you want to give an intro? How did this all start? What are
How
the
did it
odds?
all start? So when I was 10, it's funny. No, I mean, I've always been a creative kid. But yeah, when I was 10, I went to see this musical, The Sound of Music in Brazil. And I remember it was like this big theater spectacle, and I was completely raptured by it. And I was thinking the whole thing, like, this is what I want to do, like, be on stage. And then right after that, I started doing theater, and then later started singing, and then just happened.
So slowly, like one thing after the other came. It's not that you began everything simultaneously.
No,
Yeah.
of course. Theater and singing came kind of like around the same time, yeah. But then, yeah, that's basically the main thing I've done most of my life that I studied, and then later on, other things came as well, yeah.
So the most important thing to you was like this urge to perform, to be on stage and share, if I get it correctly.
Yeah.
This is like what art gives you, like how can I say, a space to express, or what is exactly that art gives you actually? If you have ever thought.
That's a very deep question. Yeah, I mean, of course, when you're 10, you're not thinking about what is art and what's the meaning of doing art and what is it for. You're just, I liked it. I felt it was a passion and a calling for that. And that's what I was doing. And then, of course, later on, I went into university, and then we start thinking, like, why are we doing what we do? Like, why are we artists? And that's a whole discussion that people have been discussing for thousands of years. But then, yeah, for me personally, of course, it's a way to express myself, and it's a way to connect to people, to the audience. And I don't really know. I mean, yeah, I feel it's just the thing that I know how to. I don't know if I know how to do, but I like to do.
It feels natural.
Yeah.
I guess you might be a bit anxious before, but when you are in the stage, it feels like, okay, this is my place now. This is my time.
Definitely. Yeah. People always ask me, of course, that people who are not artists, who are not performers, they always ask, like, oh, don't you get nervous being on stage and that kind of thing. And for me, it's the opposite. Like, I get nervous before, and not even like before going on stage, but like before like all the other things that we have to do as artists to like be able to be on stage. That's like the most like tiring part of it. But then the moment I step on stage, it's like, okay, everything is good, and that's it.
Yeah, that's very unique. Like, to be honest, personally, I get very anxious, like, even while performing sometimes. And I always admire when I see that. And it's something you can feel, really. Like, you don't have to tell me that you feel comfortable. I can see it, to be honest.
No, of course I do get nervous also, but it's like, it's different. It's not like this being nervous, like, oh my God, I have to be on stage. It's more of like an excitement and rush of adrenaline of being like,
Yes.
here.
This framing is very important actually, because
Yeah.
it's sometimes, actually most times, it's just excitement packaged in the wrong way, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is like one performance that you really remember for, I don't know, positive or negative reasons, but is there?
To think. Oh yeah, no, there was this one concert I did here in Tallinn in Hatta. It's like this little shop in the old town, and they have like a bar, and they sometimes do these events. And it was like my first time there, and it was actually like exactly 1 year ago. It was like in March sometime, and it was my first time performing there, and it was like a full house. It was really crowded, and I was like very surprised, because I was like, why are all these people here to see me? Like,
So it was your own show.
yeah. And I don't know, I guess they just did a very good job in advertising it. And also because like a few weeks before that, I had another concert, like another place, which was not very full. And I had, it's all those things about like the part that is not being an artist and being on stage, but all the things behind that you have to do. So like the advertising and the bureaucratic stuff and the organizing everything, and that is like, which I hate. Not hate. Hate is a very strong word.
I mean, it's less. It's not so creative. It's like the logistics.
And
let's say.
And it's very like, and it's not what I want to do. No, I just want to go on stage, but of course I have to deal with all these things as well. And then I remember I had done this other concert in this other place a few weeks before that was not very crowded. Like the marketing was not very well done, and then so I was kind of like a bit disappointed after that one. So then when I came to do this one in Hatta, I was kind of expecting the same thing. So my expectations were very low. And then when there was like all these people, and I had some friends coming as well, and I had another friend who was a photographer who was visiting, and he also took some great pictures. And I don't know, the whole vibe felt so nice, and the people were so nice, and that was the time I felt like, okay, I'm doing something right. I must be.
There's a sparkle. You feel like
that was a very special occasion. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like we were discussing before, you might be anxious if there are many people, let's say, in a stage that you got to perform, but actually to get to that state of having a full stage to perform, there is so many things before, as we said, marketing, like connecting with the correct people and all this stuff. It seems a bit away from the artistic, how can I say, nature, but it ends up being more important, I think, sometimes, than what you actually give.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say more important, but it's maybe just as important. And and of course, and it's like I value very much the work of people who do these things, like managers and agents and people and producers and people whose job is specifically to deal with all of that thing, so that the artist can just be artists. But of course, when you're starting, you don't have these people to work for you, so you have to do everything for yourself. And that's, I think, the hardest part of being an artist, because of course, if I had a team of like manager, agent, producer, and like stage manager and people to organize things for me, and I would just like go there, like sit and play, and then just go
the star of the person.
And don't have to do anything else. That's like the perfect world. And but it doesn't work like that. But I guess every artist has to go through that at some point before they become something, and they are able to have all these other people helping them.
Yeah, I think that you need to put in all this effort, and that you will get rewarded at the correct moment, let's say, more or less on average. Like if you keep putting it in, someone will notice you, and I don't know what happens after.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for this moment. But yeah.
Actually, yeah, this is like a perfect, how can I say, assist for the thing I wanted to ask you. Like, what were your dreams in regarding art, or maybe in general, 10 years ago? If you have reached them, and what are your dreams now?
Okay, I can say this. Yeah, 10 years ago, I
If you
was
even
like
remember, yeah.
15, 16. And I remember my dream back then was to like be on Broadway. I wanted to be like doing musical theater because that was the thing that started me, and that was like the first big thing that I wanted to do. And that's what I studied and kind of pursued for many, many years. So I remember very clearly, like, no, I want to go to, and specifically Broadway. I want to live in New York, and I want to, be on the show. Or, yeah, I had either like be on the show or be a director on Broadway specifically, because my education is in theater directing. So I always also like being like behind the scenes, also in this place of directing, which is very interesting. So I had like these two kind of main goals or ideas of what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. Later on, I realized, no, that's not really what I want. Or I discovered other things, of course, because when you grow older and you just mature and you see that there's so much more in the world to explore. And then if you ask me today, what is my dream? That's hard. I guess I would say, like, on a very humble note, like, to just be able to do my art and live off of that, which is already something quite hard, far-fetched for so many people and so many artists in the world. But yeah, just being able to like, do music or theater or whatever, but like being an artist and not having to worry about like money and like, oh, when it's gonna be like next gig, or how am I gonna pay rent this month, and that kind of thing. So that's like the baseline dream. But then if you like extrapolate that and be like, oh, what's your greatest dream? Then of course I would like to be very successful and famous. And I think famous has a very like
It's very relative, eh?
yeah, and also like when you say, oh, I want to be famous, it sounds very shallow and like stupid, like, oh, I just want to be famous. But it's more of a thing of like being successful and being recognized by your work. And of course, you to be recognized, at least in this field in music, you have to have an audience, and then of course that's what fame kind of means.
That's a very good point. Like, I mean, everyone wants fame, and it's difficult to express it in a non-petty way, in a way that doesn't seem small, belittling.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, and that's also like a paradox, because I don't know, I've never been famous, so I can't say like, oh, it's a terrible thing, but I know many artists who are, and they say like, oh, I wish I could just do my art and be successful, but without the fame part, without like having so many people knowing who you are and following you and like that kind of stuff, which of course can be very annoying at some extent. But that's a paradox. You cannot, to a certain degree, have that kind of success in this field without that other part that comes with it, which is being famous per se. Which, for example, is different for like a doctor or something like that,
Exactly.
which you can be very successful and recognized in your field and like kind of known by your peers, but
And then you can walk in the street and nobody
no one
knows
has
you.
no
like,
idea who you are. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. Would you prefer like to be famous doing things that you don't like, or being like, I don't know, earning like the minimum amount of money that you need to live, but doing things that you like 80% of the time or all the time, let's say?
That's also a very difficult question because there's also the thing like, of course, I would always rather do what I like, but at the same time, I wonder how would it be possible to only do that and have like the minimum to live with that without being famous to some degree. And on the other hand, also I wonder, being famous doing something I don't like, how would that happen? And at the point where I'm already at a certain degree of fame, I can just like stop doing whatever it is that I don't like and start doing what I like, because then I already have like a kind of base, audience base to support me in whatever I choose to do. That's always also what we see. It happens a lot in Brazil nowadays when people go on like these reality shows and they have absolutely nothing to show for them, like in terms of like content or like being an artist or anything like that. They're just like there. And I don't mean like The Voice or like these competitions where you are an artist and you go there competing, but I mean like Big Brother or these like stupid reality shows. And they go there and then they become super famous because that's like on the media everywhere and everyone knows them. And then after that, they decide, oh, now I'm going to be an artist. Like I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a singer. And even though they never done that before in their lives.
I see.
And there's like a whole discussion on that, which I will not dive in. But the point is like, at that point, at that degree of like being famous, or like being known, you can kind of, in the world we live today, you can kind of choose to do anything because you will have that support of like the media and like the audience and whatever.
So if you get the fame somehow, you can use it to any means. You mean like it's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember. I have in mind some people, YouTubers, let's say, who go to reality shows and they are open. Like I just do it to get an audience, and then I'll use it to do something that I really want. Let's say it's kind of a compromise, maybe.
Yeah.
But would you do that?
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no to it's not something I would pursue, but if the opportunity arises, yeah, of course.
So you've been like in art, I don't know, more than 10 years. I don't exactly know the number, but like what's the most important thing that you've gained, you think?
I think the understanding that we are all very irrelevant in a way, or like kind of meaningless, that the world will go on and like it doesn't really matter what we do, and this is like for good and bad, for like in terms of like if I mess up today, no one will really remember it tomorrow. But also like when we're creating, it takes off a little bit of pressure of like having to be perfect all the time, because obviously we're not and we cannot, and that's why art exists, I think. And so this kind of like maturity to see that it's okay, I can just do my thing, and that's like I'm doing my best, and that if I just do it, and that's it. And it's kind of pointless to worry so much about what will come out of it. So as long as you do what you like, what you're passionate about, what you feel like you have to do, then that's enough.
That's so relatable. Like you really touched me, to be honest, now, because this is how what I have been feeling. Like you might put all this effort in something, you might be super like stressed. How will it be perceived? Or you might be feeling very proud about something, and in the end, you sometimes you get the opposite result. Sometimes you just get a result mediocre, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
What matters is how you feel, I think, more when you are in the creation kingdom, let's say. That's how I like to call it, yes.
There's this book, what's his name? Rick Rubin, I think. He's like this big American producer, and he wrote this book called The Creative Act.
The Creative Art.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like a very philosophical book about like art and creation. And he talks a lot about this, like how the artwork is the final goal, like, and how it will be perceived after it's done. It's none of the artist's business. Kind of, it's like, of course, it will be, but to the extent of when you're in the position of being the creator and in the moment of creating, the only thing you should have in mind is the creation itself and not like the outcome of it after it is done, because that's something that no one can foresee. So that's also kind of like applying this idea that it doesn't really matter, and it takes a lot of weight of our shoulders as creators and as artists.
Yeah, I think when you start getting blinded by the end goal, you lose a part of yourself. Like you don't put your full self into it, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
But I was thinking now, like in your 9 to 5 job, let's say, the stakes are so low. You know, like you do a small thing, you have a small result, and then you go home and you're like, I made something today. Let's say I'm happy. Okay, I don't say that, but to give you an example. But in art, it's like there are no rules. You are left on your own. Like it might be very scary, but once you come up with something that really comes from inside, it's so much more rewarding, regardless of the result. And this is something I'm really working to accept now. It's very difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, because there's also this thing that art is not, it's not a science. It's not something that it's not like a production line in the, like when you're making TVs or computers, that it's gonna be produced to that extent and that amount according to certain rules. No, it's just there's like flows of creativity and creative energy that come and go, and sometimes you'll be more, what we call, inspired, or so, and more things will come out, and other times not so much. But also one thing that this guy points in this book is that persistence is very important, and like I forget the word. Consistency, yes. Being consistent on your work is also very important, because you never know when like so-called inspiration will come. But you have to always be open and prepared for it, and always have the means to pursue it when it comes. And even when it doesn't, you should still be like working
towards that, like putting yourself in situations that
exactly.
Yeah, I very agree with that. Like I've seen it a lot in artists. There is sometimes not a system at all, no consistency, no. Someone is like, okay, I didn't have inspiration for 5 years, and this phrase seems very wrong to me, to be honest.
Yeah, and of course, like that is also very relative to what kind of art you do and what kind of work you do, and what means you need to support. Because sometimes someone says, oh, I haven't had inspiration for 5 years. Maybe they didn't need to have inspiration because they're very rich and they don't need to work.
That's true.
So like, yeah, for example, Adele can go and sit and not release anything for 5 years and she'll be fine. And, but I think there's also another point that, if maybe you weren't pursuing that, maybe you didn't want to have inspiration or produce anything for these 5 years, and that's okay. Also, like, not every artist needs to be creating something all the time. Maybe you had other things to care about.
No,
And that's totally
you're right.
fine.
You're right. I was mostly thinking of people who try, but like they don't succeed for a long time, and I'm thinking that something may be a bit fundamentally wrong there. But uh, there are so many cases, as the ones we said. That
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
Mm.
Yeah, because also nothing is very like so straightforward. So you can have like, you know, what is being successful. That's also a thing. Like, is it like commercial and financial success? Because that's like a whole other thing that's very little related to making art nowadays, especially like we said before. So like, I don't know. There's so many variables in this that we can't judge or like kind of try to understand, because every artist is different and every situation is different.
You're right, actually. Yeah, that's interesting. I might have to rethink a bit on this. I wanted to like kind of wrap up with your plans, let's say, for the future in terms of art. Do you have something in mind?
Right now, I feel like I need to just go live life a bit, because I feel like I have been kind of stuck in a certain period, in a certain place in my life, where even though I have been creating consistently and in an okay rate, and I'm pleased with the things I created in this time, because I had some kind of stability and comfort to do that, which was very important. But it got to a point where I felt like I need to go into the world and live and see new things so that I can have material to create, because I also felt that within this moment it got to a point where I was just talking about the same things over and over. Like, you know, I have exhausted all my creative
All your sources, like
resources, and which is fine also, but for me I felt like, okay, maybe let's go and take a break and do something different. So I don't have any plans, like concrete plans of like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna produce this and then release this album and do that or whatever. Right now I'm just feeling like I need to go out and see the world and live and acquire new material so that I can create more in the future and see where that goes.
And usually when you take distance from something, it tries to pull you back, I think. This is when the
of
most
course,
ideas
yeah.
come.
No, and then of course I'm always creating something. Like it's not like, oh, now I'm not gonna write anything for a certain amount of time that doesn't exist. And like sometimes one day I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, I need to write this down. but yeah, in the sense of like just traveling and not having like this stable and consistent, like, oh, today I'm gonna sit for that many hours. And right now I'm more into just like living and seeing where it goes and
I see.
accumulating those experiences.
Yeah, that's a beautiful end, let's say, so that you're even more rich and feel recharged, refreshed.
Yes.
For sure. Wish you luck on that and lots of fun. Thank you so much for this talk. I really enjoyed, and we'll put some links somewhere here so that you can find CONRADO. CONRADO.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Amazing.
you. It's great. I was loving too much in all the wrong places, searching too hard for all the right faces, trying to find something no one else could give me, when all I really needed was to find myself within. And yet I keep on searching through seas and continents, content? Where will I find love? Is love ever to be found, or just meant to keep us looking? Where will I find love? No more unrequited Where will I find love? Is love ever to be found, or just meant to keep us